Building it brick by brick.
I try my best to examine the historical events that led up to the issues that we face today and to dismantle the mistruths and the misconceptions about those events brick by brick. As an example, in 1981, Fortune magazine ran an article extolling the virtues of Chile's brave new world of Reaganomics. But the article was oblivious to the pervasive repression by the government of the people and the explosion of shantytowns in Chile. He joined the University of Chicago Graduate School of Business as professor of industrial relations, and that is where he met Milton Friedman. Rumsfeld called Friedman and his colleagues, quote, a cluster of geniuses, while he and other self-described young pups would come in and learn at their feet, at the feet of Friedman and the Chicago boys. I was so privileged, he says. 1975 was a pivotal year for Margaret Thatcher because she won a Conservative Party leadership battle against Edward Heath. But most importantly, for this discussion, in April 1975, an American visitor came calling to the UK. Ronnie and Maggie were a match made in neoliberal heaven. Thatcher recalled the meeting in a 1997 speech she gave to the Heritage Foundation, saying, quote, as soon as I met Governor Reagan, I knew that we were of like mind, and manifestly so did he, end quote, Thatcher said. We shared a rather unusual philosophy, and we shared something else rather unusual as well. We were in politics because we wanted to put our philosophy into practice, end quote. Friedman was the guru of the Reagan administration, so much so that in 1988 he received the National Medal of Science, and Reagan honored him, Milton Friedman, with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The policy of Thatcher and Reagan produced enough shocks that the conditions were favorable enough to produce the desired results for the few in the key areas in a neoliberal or a corporatist system: deregulation, privatization, and cuts to social spending. But the growth was tilted toward financially weaker institutions, which could only attract deposits by offering very high rates, and which could only afford those rates by investing in high-yield, risky investment loans. So in the end, the focus on being able to report growth, which is what this was all about. It wasn't about profit. It was about being able to prove that financially you are growing over the ability to show actual solvency for financial institutions, coupled with loosened regulations and lessened oversight and rampant unchecked fraud, led to the defaulting and bankruptcies of over 700 savings and loans. Large families using a relatively small house saw their charges go up considerably, and the tax was thus accused of saving the rich money and moving the expenses on to the poor. A massive protest that turned into a riot against the poll tax began to melt the Iron Ladies regime. When the Social Security system was perceived as on the brink of bankruptcy, which it never was, President Reagan brought in Alan Greenspan. As a matter of fact, the Tax Reform Act of 1986 and its impact on the alternative minimum tax reduced nominal rates on the wealthy and eliminated tax deductions while raising taxes on lower income individuals. In addition, the thing that conservatives beat us over the head with, the debt, rose from 26.1% GDP in 1980 to 41% GDP by 1988. Maggie and Ronnie loved their taxes. Their taxes that they loved were terrible for us. The only difference was in the UK, those citizens fought back. Here, we believed the myth of Reaganomics. In his first year in office, Reagan halved the budget for public housing in Section 8 to about $17.5 billion. And for the next few years, he sought to eliminate federal housing assistance to the poor altogether. Another area that Thatcher and Reagan were absolute soulmates on was their hatred of unions. Margaret Thatcher famously declared, in regard to her fight with the mine workers union, quote, "We had to fight the enemy without in the Falklands, and now we have to fight the enemy within, which is more difficult but just as dangerous to liberty." She characterized British workers as the enemy within. Reagan made good on his promise, firing more than 11,000 air traffic controllers, jailing strike leaders, and ultimately abolishing the union. More than any other labor dispute of the past 3 decades, Reagan's confrontation with the PATCO union undermined the bargaining power of American workers and their labor unions, just like Margaret Thatcher did with her crushing of the mine workers union. And it was an absolute disaster in the UK and in the United States. Income inequality rose in both countries. Poverty rose in both countries. Homelessness rose in both countries. But according to the spin doctors for Thatcher and Reagan, their policies worked. Why? Because the markets were making millions, billions, trillions even, off the backs of the poor. The Falklands War was codenamed Operation Corporate, not Cooperate, Corporate. Thatcher's re-election in 1983 was secured by the victory of Britain over Argentina in the Falkland War. But some of the policies that caused quite a bit of damage were implemented before Reagan was president. And this is why neoliberalism is not just a conservative problem, it's a Democrat problem too. My name is Jacqueline Luqman. This has been Brick by Brick.
Building it brick by